Hello, loves. So today on Chat and Channel Session, I wanted to talk about being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Most of us have been set up to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, even if that prophecy was imposed by someone else, by circumstance, by illness, by society, whatever it was imposed by. We still consent to that prophecy on some level. And that's why many of us feel destined, quote unquote, to live it out. And in my experience, we just don't have to. But if we don't want to live it out, we have to understand the process of unraveling the prophecy and unraveling and removing consent from belief in the prophecy. So let's break that down a little bit more. But first, if you are new here, welcome. My name is Danielle, #Damcl at These Enlightened Edits of damseldesigns.com. I am a spiritual reader, quantum channel, quantum Sikhem and shamanic energy healer, energy artist and practitioner. And this is Chat and Channel Session, where my guides, or in some cases some of you, present me with a topic and we have a stream of consciousness channeling about it. Before we dive in more, I want to invite you to relax if you have the time while listening to this, or perhaps consider listening again later. And as you do so, get out a journal or open up that notes app in your phone or favorite device and take some notes. Do some stream of consciousness writing along with me while listening, because my guides have gifted me the ability to have vocal light codes transmission so that if you are so inclined and open to it, you can also receive your own messages that will be specific to you and your circumstances. So I hope that more of you choose to do that, and I love hearing stories of those of you who like to share your insights if you are comfortable and so inclined. Remember, if you would like to share something or if you have a question, you can take part in the chat portion of this chat and channel session through the comments, and I will do my best to respond. So with that being said, let us jump in to this idea of prophecy first and foremost. So I am a reader. I am a spiritual advisor, as I said. I would also consider myself a psychic medium. I've identified with the term medium for most of my life as someone who has that ability to sit in the middle of realms or dimensions or points of contact between us and people here on the physical plane, and not only people and spirit, but beings from the other side or from the other realms. So I like that term medium when we look at it more than a spiritual medium, and see it as someone who not stands in the middle of you and God, source, deity, or other realms, but has the ability to place themselves there and translate from the middle experience. As I've gotten more and more into my career, I've stepped more away from traditional mediumship readings and into this role of, translating for more than just spirit, and also translating for that experience of higher learning and consciousness raising and addressing our patterns and our wounding. Not that it's not valuable to be a spirit medium. That was, who I was from my earliest memories onward. But I find that now, with so many souls waking up to their gifts and abilities, and really everyone having the ability to communicate with spirit, especially loved ones in spirit that we already have that connection with, I have found in the past 5 to 10 years that my gift has been more going towards, being that point of contact and that translator and that energy healer for understanding spirituality and understanding reality and understanding our own patterns and woundings and where our energy is and has been, in terms of past life and Akashic records too, and where the understanding of that energy could be projecting us in terms of the possible futures and the co-creative futures that we wish to create as part of manifesting and all of that. So that's really where a lot of my passions are at the moment of this recording, at least. And so that's what I wanted to discuss with you, because even as a mediumship reader, and when psychic and medium were my primary titles before opening up all of these other title abilities and comfortabilities and calling myself these other things and, diving into that, I was never one who was a predictor per se. I always was told by my guides and my spirit team and the higher consciousness and deities that I work with to remind people that even if something about the future came through, it was really just about a possible future. And if they didn't choose to believe that and put forth the effort to carry forth that future, that would not be something that would come to pass, and that they had to decide whether that was a future they agreed with and actually wanted. Now, a lot of people don't have the capacity or the willingness yet to go into all of those things. And even at the time that I was saying these messages to people, early in my career, before I got so into quantum physics and quantum mechanics, I didn't understand all of what that message meant from my guides, and I was really just passing the message along. But now, being in the fields of quantum physics and mechanics and being a quantum energy healer, for so many years, I understand what that means. I understand that if a message comes through about the future, it is really only one possible future. And, it may be projected across several possible realities, but we have to decide, do we want to carry forth and continue with the momentum that's taking us towards that possible future, or do we want to take the information as it's being presented and have a willingness to dive into our energy and our energy fields to see what's been projecting us there, or what entropy has been carrying us towards that, and choose something else and build different building blocks of momentum to carry us towards a different future. Now, obviously, that's easier said than done, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but this is where it shows you that prophecy always requires consent. Now, that consent, I've talked about quantum consent before, but basically, quantum consent can be conscious or it can be unconscious. Now, we make the unconscious known by being willing to dive into that energy field, dive into our past, dive into our belief systems, and see which things have been consenting to experiences that we may not agree with, or that we may no longer agree with and resonate towards. Remember, we have an ego, and the ego likes sameness. The ego likes to go through the same thing over and over again. So if we have these belief systems or these traumas or these patterns that are negative to us, if they are familiar, part of our ego may have deemed them as safe, even if they are abusive and not safe. And so we can go through this process of being the self-fulfilling prophecy to live these experiences or echoes or mirrors of these experiences over and over again in repeating patterns. Whether we agree with or want them or not, they could touch so many different areas of our lives, especially in relationships. This is where we get the pattern of the same type of people or the same types of relationships or the same ways relationships end over and over again, even if they are different people, even if they are different places or time periods or lifetimes, until we learn the lesson and heal the trauma, or in some cases retrieve the lost part of our soul that went through such traumas or experiences. Our ego likes to have us repeat those things to end the karmic loop, to end that lesson or that type of experience. But a lot of people forget how to heal that, or how to end that, or choose not to end it and continue cycling, whether that is conscious or subconscious. This is also where we have the phenomena of a lot of people reliving patterns of their family. Now, this can happen through things like ingrained and carried forward ancestral trauma. But it can also happen in terms of things like epigenetics and, certain people in the family having certain genes turned on and off to disease and the repeating patterns of those disease. Now, in my experience, when we learn to recognize the lesson or learn to recognize if we are consenting to this experience or not, then we can end those patterns faster and, in essence, end the process of being that self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd also like to put a note in here for people that are being the self-fulfilling prophecy of their parents' prophecy or philosophy, right? So many people carry forward this trauma or this ingrainment of what their parents want or what their families want or what is expected of them. This happens in terms of society as well, what society expects. And we have the power to end those things and choose for ourselves, but a lot of times we forget that we do. Now, if we carry a lot of quote unquote negative beliefs, because there's not really positive and negative in the quantum spectrum, it's all what you choose to align yourself with and agree with. But if we have a lot of what we perceive of as negative beliefs, or especially if we have a lot of trauma or inner child wounding, there can be a lot of subconscious or unconscious consent at play to continue patterns forward of things that we may be comfortable with because it resonates as the trauma or the negativity that we've been through, but that we may not necessarily agree with or want to experience. But we can get caught in a cycle of entropy and in this cyclical downward spiral of continuing to attract things that we don't like and don't agree with, but our brain or our body or our trauma body specifically has become comfortable with and magnetized to. We can have a set point in our energy that is comfortable with the negative patterns, with the victimhood, with the betrayal, with the disloyalty, because those are things that we may have experienced frequently in our past, or just to such a large degree in our past that part of us is still resonating with that until we recognize it and either completely rewrite it, heal it, or put something else positive in its place, or a combination of all of those techniques and modalities. Really, as an energy healer, I've not found that one is better than the other. It really depends on the person, their belief systems, their consciousness and knowledge level, and whether they would be someone who it's better to go in terms of healing or in terms of putting something positive in its place. Not everyone, I have found, can just put a new belief in the place of those old beliefs, although it certainly is possible. A great many people, in my experience, require a combination of recognition of those woundings, understanding of them, energy healing, maybe soul retrieval, right? Which is something that I've talked about in chat and channels before. If we have experienced things that are so traumatic that we've experienced soul loss, or the fragmentation of our soul into its removal or stuckness in another time or place, whether that is from a trauma in this life or in other lives, if you resonate as that, then doing something like soul retrieval in combination with energy healing, whether that's Akashic, quantum, Sechem, I do a combination of all of those. And then installing new beliefs usually is the most helpful route for people. Now, I understand that that can sound heavy. It can sound like a big task to take on. And That's because in my experience, it's a big task to take on, which is why I don't typically advise people to take on that task themselves with large traumas or with large patterns that they are trying to reset. Obviously, you can. This is something that I've done on my own quite frequently, but actually, that was part of my training to be able to do it for and with others. And frankly, most people are not going to be needing to do it for and with others. So please don't be ashamed, no matter how gifted you are, no matter how psychic you are, no matter how many wonderful connections you have with God, source, deity, spirit, whatever you like to call it. Please do not be ashamed to call in help from someone like myself or someone with more experience in particular modalities than you. If you are addressing something large in your life and you feel that it would be beneficial to you to have help in healing and recognizing those things, I really advise you, not that this is pressure to work with me, but please do not be afraid to call in and ask for that help, whether that is from your spirit team, which of course you should always do, or from someone in the physical like myself. In my experience, having that ability to have someone stand with and for you and maintain that additional perspective as you are feeling all the things that it most often takes to heal these things can be an immensely valuable tool and help you bypass years or lifetimes worth of material, which is something that I'm very honored to do for people. So if you would like to work with me or feel called to explore working with me in that capacity, there is a contact for consult form linked in the description where you can get in touch with me and we can see if you are a good fit for us to work together and for me to build you one of my custom quantum energy healing containers or life and consciousness coaching plans and packages. Like I said, no pressure to work with me in that capacity, but I know some of you sometimes ask, so that is why I have the consult form there for one of my select energy healing spots. I do also offer quantum sessions and Akashic Records readings and sessions that may be helpful to you, so you can explore those things too in the description or via my website, Damcl Designs, DAMCL Designs.com. But now with that little key being said there for those of you who would like to work with me in that capacity, let's get back to talking about prophecy. Now, this is something that really has continued to be validated for me in my continued work in the fields of quantum physics and even in the realms of manifesting and things like reality transurfing. I've had discussions with a newer friend of mine, Shlomo Friedman, who has quite an amazing channel about these things. And, he is also of the belief that prophecy is the ability for that prophet to create a reality, which is why I've been so careful in doing things like predictions or prophecies. Now, it's not to say that I don't get that information, because I quite often do, but I understand the validness of everyone's consent and everyone's free will. And so I've taken it very seriously to have a large and growing platform, larger than my base is in person with people. And I don't often share predictions or prophecies. What I have done very often is sometimes I will put up an energy update or an energy report about things that are currently in the field that some people may not be aware of, like if there are solar storms or something, or if there are large numbers of people that seem to be going through something in the dream worlds, or with energy upgrades through, different light codes and things that are streaming through planetary elements or consciousness expansions at the time. But I do that very carefully and without looking too far into the future, because I don't really want to put things out there that project people into feeling that they have to believe and consent to that future that I'm bringing through at the time, especially if I don't know them and their only point of contact with me is through something like this. Now, I love channelings like this and videos and audios and podcasts and things where we can reach a large number of people, but I most often love doing things that are timeless and that will help you on so many different levels, no matter when you're listening to this, no matter what the energy is at the moment, no matter what the planets are saying, and things that will continue to prove helpful to you on your journey, so that no matter who you are, what realm or dimension you're resonating in, you can take these things as tools and use them towards the futures that you believe in, that you want to believe in, and that you want to create and co-create. And I want to have more people remember that we have that power. Now, utilizing that power is a learning curve, and it's something that I'm continually learning how to do. I think everyone, no matter how experienced they are or educated they are in the fields of manifesting or quantum physics or whatever label you want to put on it, we're all continually expanding. And anyone or any teacher that presents themselves as though they have all the answers and those are the permanent answers and that is it, and are unwilling to learn more or be open to different modalities or opinions or perspectives or ways of being, is a teacher that I think you may want to stay away from, because anyone who says this is it, this is the absolute truth, isn't actually in line with the quantum, which is ever expanding, in my opinion and experience, right? That's why things like religion can be so dangerous, in my opinion, because not many of the religions as we know them today present an ability or an openness for that expansion. And it's always seemed really counterintuitive to me to align the self so strongly with the word of God or this way of being if the people that are presenting that material, because it is people that are presenting it, are unopen to those words or those teachings expanding or being seen through new lenses as we, as a society, humanity, and conscious co-creative beings continue to learn, awaken, grow, heal, change, and evolve. And as we go through that process, I think things like religion and mythology and sacred texts will continue to illuminate things for us, but I also believe that we are here to download new and download more, or download new and expanded explanations or understandings of those things. And in my experience, God, Goddess, Source, Deity is not stagnant and has never wished to be stagnant, and wishes to expand and continue to be in touch with, their creation, the creator, the architect, whatever you call higher power. I think it's counterintuitive to believe that they would just create everything, create these sacred books, create these sacred texts, and then expect that to be it with no expansion. I believe that we are a part of God's source deity, and that we are a part who incarnates so that they can learn about themselves, so that they can learn about what happens from their creation and continue to grow. And so that is where I believe we are in a co-creative experience with our higher power. And I also believe that's what ascension is, in terms of growing and healing and expanding our consciousness and our capacity to reach back to those levels that we stem from. I believe that it's a cycle, right? We are originally part of that Godhead, part of God's source deity, or the goddess head if you prefer. I don't put a gender on deity. I utilize both and work with both as part of all things. But we're originally part of that in my experience. And then we separate from that and go as far as we can or as far as we'd like to in terms of incarnation, and then start this cycle back. We have these experiences and we go back on this upward spiral. Sometimes people go downward spiral at first, and then typically we go into this upward spiral, which is where we come into the beliefs about ascension and transitioning into what used to be the 4D is now the 5D in many people's beliefs. Whatever you believe about that is okay. A lot of the older religious or spiritual or metaphysical teachers that you will find from books from the early 19th century and 20th century were resonating in terms of going into the fourth dimension. So people like Joseph Murphy, Dale Carnegie, Flora Scovel Shen, Neville Goddard, they were more resonating with their teachings, projecting people and working with the fourth dimension. So that's something to be aware of if you are a manifester. That's why so many spiritual teachers today will take cues from them and their teachings, but also expand upon into teachings of their own and of our own now, because we are no longer wishing to project only into the fourth dimension. We are wishing to project past that into the fifth dimensions and beyond. As someone experienced with multiple dimensions, most comfortably up to the high 30s of dimensions, I want us to be aware of that and be careful with that, because we never want to say that we're tapping into only one transition. We are quantum and nonlinear beings, and we have really the ability to expand into whatever transitional dimension we want. It's just that we have all signed up to be part of an experience if we're in the same time frame where Gaia or our Earth or our planet is also transitioning into these dimensions. So that's something to be aware of. And I hope that you appreciate all of this deep geeking and all of this quantum metaphysical material. I'm sure that it'll tap upon a whole bunch of different things for you. I know it's sometimes a little strayed from that topic here of stop being a self-fulfilling prophecy, but in my experience, the understanding of all these things and all of these teachings helps us to regain the tools to stop being a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I do want to circle back as we start to end this session here, and I want to address, now that we have the understanding that we use our consent, whether it's conscious or subconscious, to project into those predictions or those prophecies or those possible realities, how can we scale it back? We can scale it back in the understanding of that if we see that possible future coming towards us, whether that's coming from our own intuition or whether that's coming from something like a reading or a prediction or even a prophecy from a sacred text, how can we go back within and say, okay, do I resonate with that as truth? And be open for the answer, whether it's yes or no. There is no end-all be-all answer. So even if that's a yes, there are still things that you can do to decide whether you want to still continue going towards that truth or untruth. So ask yourself that question, and I'm going to leave space for those of you who are journaling. This prediction, this possible future, this thing that some reader told me or that I saw in a reading online or read in a prophecy of a sacred text, whatever this first thing is that comes to your mind, do I agree with that? Is that true for me? And what's your answer? Write it down or remember it. And then the next step is, if it's not true for you, go in and say, okay, so that's not true for me. How can I go about the process of dropping it, of forgetting it, of disentangling myself from anything that was leading me down that path? Now, this can go for things in terms of what society is currently projecting as well, right? So as empaths also, it's very important to understand that the things that society is having upheaval about at the moment are not necessarily yours to continue forward with. You can care about them and send love and caring and respect without entangling yourself in that possibility, in that possible tragedy or future. So that's something also important to note. Now, for those of you who asked the question, is this true for me, and got a yes, the next question would be, do I want this to be true for me? Because something can be true for you without your want and your desire actually being the same or simultaneous in truth. So, do I want or agree with this being true for me? You can find truth in the fact that maybe you are in a body shape that you don't like at the moment, while also simultaneously saying, but I don't want that to be my body shape any longer. Now, that this is not about body shaming, but it's just about bringing up something that is physical. Please only change your body in ways that are healthy to your body, whether that is making it larger or smaller. Your safety and your health is paramount. But it is an example because our body is the most physical thing to us, right? So, do I want this to be true for me? And if the answer is no, then you go about the process of saying, okay, so where do these beliefs that it's true for me come from and stem from? Do these stem from my inner child wounds? Do these stem from people in my childhood making me feel shame or blame or sadness or ugliness about this thing, whatever it is? Does this come from society or societal pressure or societal norms or beliefs telling me that I should believe this? Does this come from limiting beliefs of society or of my family or of a victimhood mentality? Where are the earliest places that you can go back to about whatever is making this or allowing you to believe that this thing has to be true for you? And address it from there if you can. Doing things like inner child healing, doing things like rewriting and healing of beliefs, especially of apologizing to yourself and the other fractal parts of yourself for having to experience those things, those limitations, those traumas, etc., can be really helpful in terms of disentangling and going through undoing the quantum entanglement on your soul in regards to those issues. And once you are disentangled, then you can step forward into the path where those things do not have to be true for you anymore. And what is the new truth that you want to project forward? So if you believe, let's say, that something has to be hard, where do those beliefs stem from? How can you disentangle from those and or heal those beliefs? And then what new belief would you project forward, going forward towards the future that you do agree with and actually want? So maybe you can project a belief that things get to be easy and fun, that life gets to be rewarding. These are things that I am still working on after a lot of experiences to the contrary. So I bring them up because I know many light workers are working on those things as well. And we can install those beliefs, but also please remember that some of these beliefs are like very deep tracks in your mind, in your neural pathways, in your nervous system. So the disentangling and the installing of new beliefs will be a process for most people. Some people it gets to be miraculous and instant and wonderful for those of you who have those experiences. But for others, it can be an upward spiral of installing new practices, new belief systems, new patterns, and new frequencies and rhythms of thought and belief. Now, we can get caught in a cycle where we have been playing the same rhythm or pattern in our head in terms of our inner dialogue for quite an extended period of time. And this can come from our own thought forms and patterns, or it can sometimes come from an externalized thought form, whether that is from our creation, our trauma's creation, or perhaps an external source which has created that and sort of implanted or allowed that to be in our field. So this is where things like awareness and self-awareness and energy cleansing and protecting and healing come into play. And it's also where it takes patience and practice to install new patterns and new rhythms of beliefs and of thoughts. This is where a lot of people like to reinstall or install new thoughts in terms of doing things like affirmations or frequency music or whatever modality works for you. You don't have to necessarily do those things, and sometimes those things can do more harm than good if we're doing them obsessively, in my opinion. But the most important thing to remember is to come at it with practice and with patience, and to remember that if you have a bad day or a bad thought, it doesn't mean that you are spiraling yourself into a negative reality. It doesn't have to mean that. So take your time and do your due diligence and work and find the ways to work in the ways which are best and most helpful for you. And really, consistency is the key. And for me, continuing to educate myself and expand my education and awareness, and also be more trauma informed, has been a key for me, in terms of the energy healing I do, and even in session work, the way I speak with people, being trauma informed and aware of the effects of trauma has been one of the most important things to me. So educating yourself in multiple fields, I know people like to kind of sometimes over-educate or dive obsessively into the fields of spirituality and metaphysics, which of course I appreciate, but also being willing to follow your guidance and educate yourself on other things as well, such as psychology or mental health or information about your nervous system, because in my experience, combining it all and finding the unique ways in which all of those puzzles fit together for each of us has been the most help. So I hope and pray and trust that this chat and channel session has been helpful to you in terms of stopping the cycle of you being a self-fulfilling prophecy. Remember, even if you have received something from your intuition and everything in your reality seems to be showing you that that is where things are headed, you still, in my experience, have the power and the right to use your free will and change it. Obviously easier said than done, and it's going to be a different process for everyone, but it is possible, and I want to remind people of that, because remember that our reality is a projection of our soul and of our inner world. And yes, there are aspects of reality which are other people's projections as well, and deciphering what is ours and what is others is a process for everyone, most especially empaths. But in your reality, you still have the highest right. So I hope that you remember how to use that right, how to use that free will, and dive more into these experiences of exploring your consent, whether that is conscious or subconscious. Remember that things can act as predictive programming, both in the fields of society and media, but also in the fields of our own reality. There is predictive programming that can come into play from our past woundings, patterns, and belief systems, in my experience. And those things can feel so very similar to intuition or to a message coming through about something that's coming towards us. So remember, if that's happening to you, ask yourself first and foremost, does this feel fearful? Does this feel scary? Does this feel forceful? Because if something feels forceful, it's most likely coming from something that's either outside of yourself or that is directly from your wounding. And in that case, you absolutely do not have to approach it as fact and agree with it or continue to consent towards it. This is where some manifesting coaches will tell you to turn away from the mirror. I'm careful about that because I don't want people to go into more dissociation, which is a trauma response. But I want you to be aware that you do not have to continue to give the power to anything in your reality, which is something that you would not agree with. Yes, sometimes we learn from hard things and things that we wouldn't necessarily agree with, but as you come to more use of your power and higher forms of consciousness, you get to pause things, not stand in that urgency, and in the pause, ask yourself, why is this coming? Why is this happening? Why is this a possibility? is this something that I can learn in another way? And that is a very powerful question for me and in my experience with myself, my realities, and that of my clients. What am I supposed to learn from this? What am I meant to learn from this? And is this something that I can learn in another and more agreeable to me way? And when you ask that, a whole new world of universal possibilities can come through to you in terms of presenting other ways of you learning that lesson that don't necessarily have to be hardship or things that you don't agree with. Okay, so please, please, please remember that. And if you have liked this and resonated with this chat and channel session, I encourage you to bookmark it and come back to it and listen again like a pep talk or like an invitation for more of your own information anytime these types of things are presenting themselves in your reality, or anytime you have been told a reading or a potentiality or a prophecy that you're not necessarily agreeing with, and you want to go through that process of disentangling and seeing if there's another possibility for you that you would more like to go towards. So I hope that a lot of you will use this particular chat and channel session over and over again in that capacity. Remember, if you have liked this and it's resonated with you, please also remember to like it. That really helps these things go a long way in terms of spreading through the algorithm to others who may find it helpful. If you would like to explore more chat and channel sessions, you can use the link for the playlist in the description and explore other chat and channels with me on a myriad of topics, and I would love to have you. If you are not a subscriber yet, I encourage you to explore subscribing. I would love to have you as a subscriber for future chat channel sessions and other spiritually enlightening videos alike. Remember, if you would like to work with me, there are links to do that as well through my website, damcldesigns.com, as we discussed with quantum energy healing containers, quantum and Akashic records, readings and sessions, other types of spiritual sessions, and more. On my website, you will also find other ways that I express myself and my gifts in terms of energy art and enlightened merch, digital downloads, classes, and other goodies. And if you have found any of this or my chat and channel sessions helpful and you would like to support the channel and you are called and drawn and able, absolutely no pressure. I do also have a way for people to support me and my work and the channel through donations, which you can do through paypal.me/DSEnlightenedEdits or through the donate links that are in the description. As I said, that is not necessary or a requirement in any way. I do share this information freely and publicly, and I'm so excited for it to reach as many people as possible. But for those of you who would like to leave any amount appreciated donation, that is also accepted, and it does help me to support my works as well. So thank you very much for those of you who choose to do that. Thank you for those of you who are clients, old and new, and choose to work with me. I love and appreciate you. And thank you to new friends as well, whether this is your first listen or your only listen, although I hope you will be back. I am so grateful that you are here, that you are exploring these things and exploring your power in this way. Thank you for choosing to do that through my works, and I wish you nothing but the best. With that, I am going to close this chat and channel session. Be blessed with love, light, and light codes. Love, Danielle. #Damcl @DSEnlightenedEdits of DamclDesigns.com.